Hi, welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Carr, and I am Chief Knowledge Broker for Octo, Open Communications for the Ocean. And I'd like to welcome all of you here today, and especially welcome all of our panelists here today. This webinar is being co-hosted with the Ocean Sewage Alliance. And we have Jasmine Fournier from the Ocean, who's Executive Director of Ocean Sewage Alliance. We'll take over in just a minute to introduce the topic of today's webinar and all of our panelists. But before we get started with that, I wanted to let everyone know that to ask questions of our panelists, we'd love it if you could put the questions into the Q&A panel of the user interface. We'll have some early presentations by our panelists, and then we'll move on to discussion. So feel free to put the questions in the question and answer panel at any point. The chat is reserved if you have any sort of technical difficulties or anything you wanted to send to the hosts and panelists, you can put in the chat. But any questions for the panelists, please put in the question panel. Okay, wonderful. Jasmine, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. And Sarah, just real quick, can you give us a quick overview of Octo so that everybody knows from our Ocean Sewage Alliance who you are as well?
Oh, sure. I'm Sarah Carr and with Octo, and I send lots of you a lot of email. But in general, we are an NGO, and we have programs in communities that empower conservationists and resource managers to access global knowledge and apply best practices worldwide. Many of you are familiar with our various communities. We host dozens of webinars a year to help ocean professionals stay up to date on best practices and the latest tools and research for marine conservation and management. Octo also provides custom consulting services. And we have three global online communities: MPA Help, EBM Help, short for Ecosystem-Based Management, and the Ocean Plastic List. And these communities all work to share knowledge about marine protected areas, improving the protection and management of ocean ecosystems, and preventing ocean plastic. And if you didn't, when you registered, you were asked if you wanted to join in our communities. If you didn't say yes then and you change your mind, just contact me at sarah@octogroup.org, and we can add you to any of these communities, as well as to receive notifications of our webinars. All right, thanks, Jasmine.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm Jasmine Fournier, and we at the Ocean Sewage Alliance, we are a small but very mighty nonprofit committed to eliminating sewage pollution from the ocean, which seems like a win-win for everyone. And we're excited to host this panel today because we talk a lot about circularity in our work. And when I talk about circularity, I mean recycling and reclaiming resources in our water systems so that we make no waste and that we preserve our precious resources like water and keep sewage out of the ocean. We've talked a lot about this in our work, and we want to highlight the Indigenous folks and natives that have talked about circularity for eons. And that's where we got the idea for this panel. We were going to have Dr. Shanondora Billiot moderate the panel today, but she had a family emergency. So we will be moderating it with us, but we had hoped to have this be totally Indigenous run. But, we are hoping that everything goes okay with her. Dr. Billiot is a citizen of the United Houma Nation. I am here in Louisiana. And she wanted us to give a land acknowledgement of the tribes that live here in New Orleans is Bulbancha. The United Houma Nation is down in the lower bayous, and their ancestral land is down there, and also in the Baton Rouge region. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Yolanda López, who is an Indigenous Earth System scientist working in various subjects of nature and conservation. She also has a lovely cenote behind her as she is in the Yucatan. I was so lucky to visit there not that long ago. She has a strong background in promoting and defending the diversity of ideas, knowledge, values, and forms of self-expression of Indigenous peoples. Her extensive career encompasses a wide range of topics within both natural and social sciences. I had the pleasure of meeting her at World Water Week in Stockholm. She gave an incredible panel there as well. She's collaborated with both academic and non-academic organizations and multilateral systems at different levels, including the United Nations, UNESCO, and CBD. She actively engages in discussions aimed at fostering trust between nations through science and supporting effective policy development. She'll talk more about her work, but I wanted to give a brief introduction, and we're so happy to have you here, Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Should I share my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Wait a second, please. Okay, I hope you all can see my presentation and you can hear me well. I want to introduce myself again. I'm just going to say thank you very much for joining us today. It's a very special day for me to be able to talk about our Indigenous knowledge and our Indigenous understandings of this important topic, which is circularity. But I'm here to bring another perspective. Actually, I'm currently in Yucatan, so the photos you will see are more related to the work I do here in my home country. And also, I just want to make sure you can see this beautiful picture of a water lily floating in the surface of an open cenote. So I will explain more with detail in the next few minutes. So essentially, the message I would like to bring to all of you today is something that we need to start thinking about due to the current environmental challenges, especially affecting water resources. So we all live in this very beautiful and dynamic planet, and all our actions and also natural processes are affecting their own equilibrium. So it's in our interest, all of us as humanity, not only Indigenous peoples, to make sure we understand the changes, the behavior, and also what are the best approaches for dealing with those challenges. I do believe, being myself an Indigenous woman, that the Indigenous peoples' long-term observations of the planet, of the natural cycles, including the water cycle, the carbon cycle, etc., is very important. And the inclusion of this information, which sometimes is called Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous observations, will help us to develop solutions as a society to deal with those changes. So I also believe that complex problems affecting our planet are not going to be solved by single disciplines or narrow approaches. We really need to have a broad more information available, and this can come from different knowledge systems to those that we are used to work with. And I would like to start my presentation with this AILU knowledge system of the Andean region, of the Andean people in Peru, which is rooted in a different worldview and a different understanding of how everything is interconnected in an harmonious and relationship way with nature. So to focus this presentation more on the topic of circular economy for water management, I would like to bring two different concepts to you that perhaps to help you to distinguish what I want to bring to you today, what key message I would like to communicate to you. So for Indigenous peoples, we used to apply and use approaches taking only what we need in nature. And I hope you can relate to this and not to folklorize my speech. So what I wanted to say is that we really consider a planning for future generations because we depend on nature. The concept of circularity is a concept that relates to processes or systems that they reuse resources in cycles and is often associated with repairing, reuse, and recycling, which is correct. But there is one gap here, which I would like to also emphasize, that we tend to return to the same point when we talk about circularity, because we are moving in circles. For Indigenous people, circularity is seen more as a cycle because we tend to find cycles rather than circles in nature. For example, lunar cycles, life cycles. Also, I bring two different images here that I randomly found on the internet, that you can see two different, the hydrological cycle and the atmospheric cycle. And you can see how complex it is. We cannot think this as a circle. We really need to think that there are different interactions of not only natural processes, but also social conditions that affect and influence. And if we think on cycles, then we are going to repeat patterns, and we are going to repeat some of the problems on dealing with those challenges. So having said that, I would like to bring different examples to you. So for example, how the Indigenous peoples of Hawaii, they use the aloha aina, I don't know how to pronounce it very well, which exemplifies reciprocal relations of humans and the environment. And this can be seen also as something cyclical, or the Dungedaras in Nepal, and also the water management Falah in Oman and Iran, in which the use of subterranean tunnels helps to deal with water management problems. But I don't want to talk about this because I'm from Yucatan, I'm in Yucatan, and I would like to speak about my people, the Mayas of the south of Mexico. So I want to start this topic about the Mayas by giving you a brief overview. The Mayas in Mexico are and were one of the most complex societies in the ancient world. They were very good mathematicians, engineers, and they were very good in modifying the landscape to develop complex systems for water, to collect water and for storage water. The hydraulic system was tailored to the biophysical conditions, and they were very able to adapt to difficult situations. For example, water was very scarce. So essentially here we don't have any river on the surface. We only have cenotes, which is a word which derives from the Mayan word sonot, which means sinkhole. And you can see a beautiful photo here of one of the cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula. But one important aspect here is that the Mayas, as I said before, it was a very complex society, but we're still having Mayas here. They have evolved, of course, but some of the characteristics of this society remain. So for example, the language, some ceremonies, some traditions. So it's important to keep this in mind because some scholars, they talk about a Mayan collapse, but Maya culture is still alive in Yucatan. So this is one example of the cenote, or three different cenotes. Essentially, they are open, like one of the pictures on your left, and also you can find like small little holes, or bigger ones, like the one in the center, in which I'm sitting on a stair. So there are different types of cenotes, different uses, and those cenotes are still the main source of water for the Maya population, and of course also were the main source for the ancient Maya. When talking about this cyclical, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, characteristic of Maya water management, I will bring you some examples. For example, one of the main key features of this Maya water management was the construction of cisterns or reservoirs called chultunes. You can see here some examples in which Indigenous, the Maya society were able to store rainwater and to make sure there was enough water for the population despite the dry season, which was and still very long for some time. And also the use of aguada, so using essentially the altitude of some slopes, they were able to maintain the water in specific water bodies to deal with these stress situations. Another key feature of Maya water management was, for example, they were very good in water treatment. So and this has been also published in scientific journals. for those that are still denying the knowledge and the value of these approaches that belong to indigenous peoples. So essentially, the Mayas were able to use zeolite sand to purify water in their reservoirs, removing harmful microorganisms and contaminants. And also they use aquatic plants like water lilies to filter and clean water from even microorganisms. So you can see here the same photo I have in the first slide, but also how the Mayas depicted these water lilies in different ceramics and architecture, etc. Another key feature of Maya water management was the modification of the landscape. They were very good at managing water resources by building these human-made dams. They were able to construct those on the top of the hills to centralize water needs. They create water channels to provide water to communities. And this is just an example in the figure how different constructions and different reservoirs were able to build and to work with in the Mayan area. Also, they were able to deal with wetlands in the best way in terms of use them as reservoirs of water. And this was a very sophisticated water management system. Essentially, they were able to also use another type of plants to filter the water and to combine with, for example, agriculture, like you can see some cultivations of corn in the area. No? So essentially, there are many circularity principles applied to Maya water management, but we call it cycles because, as I explained before, nature is too complex to be thinking only on circles and repetitive circles every time. So we really need to think on the future generations. So essentially, in terms of principles, the Mayas were very good at keep resources in use. They were able to capture and store rainwater in those reservoirs and to have water for the rest of the year. And even during the dry seasons, they were able to regenerate natural capital, essentially to use natural systems such as the aquatic plants to maintain water quality, for example. They also practice recycling practices like the chultunes I showed or the aguadas I showed you before, in which they collected specifically rainwater for those dry seasons in Yucatan. Also, those devices were very important, not only for drinking water, but also they were using this water for agriculture, for the construction of temples or of cities, etc. And along with the constructions to access routes for the exchange of goods between communities. And there are more examples. So I can give you now because we don't have enough time, but for example, there was this decentralized management of water with neighborhoods managing their own water resources, but also allowing other communities to respond to the local conditions. So essentially, the community was able to ensure that the water was used efficiently and sustainability, and there is plenty of evidence on that as well. In terms of community-led management, also water was managed collectively, not only the regular citizens, but also the kings, the prayers, etc. And as I explained also before, this was also combined with the agriculture, which here in Yucatan was essentially based on the milpa and the cultivation, of course, of maize, beans, etc. So in summary, what I wanted to bring here is that indigenous water management, as seen in the case of the Maya and the other examples that I briefly mentioned, emphasizes this concept of cycles rather than circles. But also there is a lot of community involvement even today in order to maintain ecosystem health. I believe that the knowledge of indigenous peoples, the science of indigenous peoples is valuable for modern water management systems. And even though it's valuable for those places or countries that they do not have indigenous population, because a lot of people think that we don't have indigenous peoples here, but it's okay. But we can bring this information to solve current challenges that are affecting the wider society. Another final comment is that indigenous systems tend to balance immediate and future human needs, but also this is combined not only with human needs, but also with animal needs and the cultural and spiritual values of nature, and also the rights of nature to thrive. And this is, of course, rooted in indigenous knowledge, indigenous practices. And incorporating indigenous knowledge, science, perspectives, values, etc., in all these problems that are affecting us, like climate change, water problems, etc., particularly in terms of water management, is therefore crucial. So this is the message I would like to bring here, and I'm happy to respond to any question that you might have, and also please feel free to contact me here, and yeah, I'm very happy to participate in this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for Dr. Lopez. We're going to save the questions for after Dune's presentation, but that was so insightful. Thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dune Lankard. He's an Eyak Athabaskan native of the Eagle clan. Dune grew up in Kodava in south central Alaska. His Eyak name is Yamachaki, which you might need to correct me on that pronunciation, which means little bird that screams really loud, which I think getting to know him a little bit makes a lot of sense. He was born into a fishing family. His life and education as a subsistence and commercial fisherman began at age 5. He later earned a living as a fishery and processing consultant, as well as a commercial fisherman in the Copper River Delta and Prince William Sound. When the Exxon Valdez oil spill occurred in his backyard of Prince William Sound, Dune had to live up to his Eyak name. He transformed into a social change artist, taking on the powers that be and becoming the natives' rights leader that his mother Rosie wanted him to be. Dune has founded and co-founded numerous nonprofit organizations, including the Eyak Preservation Council, the Fire Fund, and the Red Oil Network, and the Native Conservancy. His work has helped preserve more than 1 million acres of the Copper River Delta, Prince William Sound, and the Gulf of Alaska region. He is a quite decorated speaker. We're so lucky to have him. Thank you so much, Dune, and take it away.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you all today. And, I think it's, with what's happening with the world and everything around us, it's important that we have these gatherings to think about how we can duplicate the successes going on in the world rather than the many mistakes. Ishu, which is hello in Eyak. I'm a commercial fisherman by trade in Eyak, Athabaskan from the Eagle clan. And after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, I decided to become a social change artist and activist and take on the powers that be. And now I'm a kelp farmer. And I don't know if the slides can go forward. I'm from in this slide here, it shows the different territories of Alaska of the indigenous peoples. And the orange one right in South Central, right there at the bottom, that's our Eyak homelands, which runs about 300 miles across the Gulf of Alaska coastline from Prince William Sound all the way down to Yakutat. Next slide. So this is my region where I live. Prince William Sound is about 5.5 million acres. And the sister watershed is the Copper River Delta, which is 23 million acres of land, which our ancestral homelands encompasses about 5.5% of Alaska's entire 380 million acre land base. And this is what we've been working to preserve for the last 35 years since the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Next slide. So the Copper River watershed is 3 million acres just in the lower delta, and it looks like this in the summer months. It's just this chartreuse green of braided silty waters coming from the Copper River, and there's 25,000 salmon making their way upriver daily during the summer months. We have 27 different runs of wild salmon from all 5 species. We have 2 to 3 million sockeye salmon coming home this summer. Next slide. This is, I love eagles since I'm from the Eagle clan, and this is our pink salmon, which comes back by the millions. And pink salmon, even though they're one of the smallest and discarded salmon, they're one of the most important and underrated because they have some of the highest quality of the salmon. They're just really wonderful to catch. And I used to fish. That's how I started fishing when I was 5 with my family. Next slide. Here I am with a load of pink salmon on a seiner. I was fishing with Bobby Hunkola this year, and this is a gill netter that I leased out, and mine's on the bottom right, ocean back. And I pretty much, my education has come from the Copper River Delta and Prince William Sound. When I'm on land, I get kind of paranoid and a little bit, I have a feeling that I just have to get back to the ocean. Then I feel safe because I feel like I can provide food, I can catch things, I can think like a fish, I can travel around on the water. That's much different than being on the land. And for some reason, I get lost on land often. Next slide. So the Exxon Valdez oil spill that happened in 1989 changed my entire life. It was a day the ocean died. And yet something inside of me came to life, and I decided to rise up and take on the powers that be. I formed over a dozen nonprofits. I took on 37 major environmental battles and won 35 of those. I filed dozens of lawsuits with Alaska NGOs and won 80% of those battles. We protected over 1 million acres of wild salmon habitat along the 1,500 miles of coastline that you see that was smirched by crude oil by the Exxon Valdez tanker. Next slide. The damages were profound. 35 years later, we still have dead zones in Prince William Sound. You can see the Exxon Valdez on the rocks in Bly Reef with killer whales surfacing right next to the vessel. And out of the 36 resident killer whales, about 32 or 31 or 32 have died. They just never made it after that Exxon Valdez oil spill. And they did a number of things to us, from bioremediation to hot wash, oil. They'd take soap and chemicals and Corexit and pour it everywhere. And basically the Corexit did more damage than the Exxon crude oil. And so there's just places that just will never recover. Next slide. So in 1994, we organized the first Eyak potlatch in Cordova, which was once called Eyak, in over 100 years. And we came together and brought our people together, and we decided that it was time for the Eyaks to rise up and be heard. Next slide. So in our Native Conservancy work that we started in 2003, we had to, kind of figure out, how are we going to do this work and what does it look like? And I felt like if we could continue to fight for our land back, and now with ocean farming, which I'll go into in a moment, and taking our ocean back, that we're going to bring our people back. And 60% of the new mariculture and kelp farmers around the planet are women and youth. And I believe that if the women and youth get involved in this new ocean farming industry, then the men will follow. and we'll get our people back into our communities. Next slide. This image is of the Copper River Delta from the top of the mountains, and you can just see it's huge and vast and majestic and stunning, and it's full of abundance and beauty, and this is how I grew up seeing the world. I remember I talked my sister Pamela into climbing to the top of the mountain with me, and she was in tears for about 45 minutes. And I said, Pamela, what's going on? And she said, Dune, for the first time in my life, I see the world as you see it. I look to the south and I see the Copper River Delta. I look to the north, I see Prince William Sound. And I've spent my life only seeing the grass beneath my feet, but I see what you stand for, what you fight for, what you believe in. Next slide. This is some of the threats that are happening, ongoing right now in the Copper River Delta in our homelands. Everything from offshore military training, bombs, ammunition, sinking ships, chemicals, sonars, to building a deep water port in the name of oil spill response against the public will at Shepherd Point. They want to open oil and gas drilling at Catella, which we've been able to stop. They want to open the Bering River coal fields and build a 30-mile road across the roadless Copper River Delta. There's oil and gas and different minerals on the BLM lands, and Icy Cape is mental health trust, clear cutting and mining. So the place is always under attack. Next slide. So this right here shows we've saved, in the cross-hatching, we've saved 62,000 acres of the Bering River coal field in 2017. In the smaller left-hand side, there's two smaller boxes inside of that cross-hatching. That is the Korean Alaska Development Corporation's in holdings that we're working on preserving right now, which is an additional 11,920 acres. Next slide. As you can see, this region is just stunning. Right now, the Chugach National Forest is 98% roadless and wild. It looks like this. I mean, imagine if there was a road and access roads and oil and gas drilling and coal mining, it would be a slow moving oil spill across the Copper River Delta. And that is not going to happen on my watch. Next slide. Jane Goodall, I tracked down Gifford Pinchot the third, Teddy Roosevelt the fourth, Dennis Hayes, the founder of Earth Day, Dr. Jane Goodall, Dinah Bear, Council on Environmental Quality for 5 different administrations, Bill Meadows. I tracked down all these worldly conservation people and said, you got to help me keep this place wild. And they've been helping me for the last 15 to 20 years. And we're hoping we can get this last of the Bering coalfield preserved, therefore protecting all 3 million acres of the lower Copper River watershed for all time. So ocean back, what is that? It's ocean farming. And what does success look like? It's our native conservancy. We break down the barriers. We create ocean solutions. We build resilient futures. We feed our people. And we want to build a regenerative ocean economy. Next slide. Kelp can help. And what we found was that out of the all of the mariculture plus aquaculture species in the ocean around the world right now, 50% of that weight is from kelp. 97% of the kelp that is grown and eaten in the world is grown in 5 Asian countries. So there's lots of room for kelp to be grown around the world. That'll help with erosion issues, create habitat. There's 250 different food products. I mean, the list goes on. Cement, fertilizer, everything you can possibly imagine. I believe that kelp is the hemp of the sea. So the workforce development is critical because throughout Alaska, in a lot of the coastal communities, there's upwards of 85% unemployment. And so if we can create new place-based jobs at home, then community members won't have to leave their communities in search of better jobs or higher paying jobs. I really believe that we can create thousands of jobs right in front of our villages and build regenerative economies, whether it's kelp or mariculture, which is bivalves, scallops, oysters, clams, um, uh, different species that can filter 40 to 60 gallons of water each per day. One oyster farm can clean out an entire bay in an afternoon itself. Next slide. So a lot of these jobs are addressing climate impacts with regenerative jobs and economies. Like, being a lifelong fisherman, I don't have to go out and chase the kelp around. I don't have to water it. I don't have to feed it. I don't have to fertilize it. And therefore, I look at the ocean differently. And Indigenous peoples want to get into kelp farming and mariculture for three reasons in this order. First, to take care of and heal and restore the ocean. Two, grow a traditional food source that they've enjoyed and harvested for thousands of years. And three, to build a regenerative economy that they can be proud of and part of. Next slide. This is our ocean back vision, spurring a new circular ocean economy. We work from everything from financing to kelp seed supply, because you're only as good as your seed, creating a number of services like immersion training and landscape analysis, technical assistance, diver certification that we just recently did in Metlakatla with the tribes in Cake and Metlakatla, trying to figure out how to show farmers how to source their seed, grow their seed, cultivate it, deploy it, and monitor it, and now focusing on processing and transportation to market. So we feel that with the work that we're doing and the partners that we have with Spruce Root and the organized Village of Cake and the Metlakatla Indian community, that we're going to be able to build a coastal economy that's going to help take care of the land, take care of the ocean, take care of the people. And in these times of hardship, we're going to have to rise up and think about where our food sources come from. We're going to have to, organize. We're going to have to network. We're going to have to work together and collaborate, build partnerships, and do everything we possibly can to exist during these climate changing times. Next slide. So right now we're expanding our native ocean monitoring program to help Indigenous peoples, look at the ocean differently, figure out how to monitor their wildlife and their sea life, look at the different kelp farms, get magic buoys in the water, which are data buoys, and also be able to become the new water keepers for the ocean, because every mariculture and kelp farm around the planet are going to be the new water keepers for the ocean. Damn it, we need it. The ocean needs restoration. It needs love. It needs support. We have to learn to direct our energy, our time, money, and love to the places that need it most if we're going to make a difference in our lifetime while it still matters. Next slide. So I do my work in spirit of my daughter, Ananda. She's filed 2 climate change lawsuits, at the first one when she was 1, the second one when she was 7. Both cases went before the Alaska Supreme, and we've won in several states. I feel that the work that I do is for the youth, it's for the future of the children, it's for the future of the planet. And the youth are the ones who are going to inherit the bad decision debt that we make. And so we need to, again, rise up. Last slide. So I'd like to say awa'ata, thank you. And I'd be happy to participate in any question and answer period. So thank you much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dune. That was so interesting. So before we open up questions to the audience, I've got 2 questions that Dr. Billiot had prepared before she had to unfortunately make it today. So her first question was, how does two-eyed seeing apply to the work you do, especially placing Indigenous communities first while navigating the Western science language?
And that question's for who? For us?
Oh, for both of you.
Okay, Yolanda, go ahead.
Thank you, Dune. Well, being myself an indigenous scientist, for me, I myself train myself on learning how to speak the language that Western scientists, they want to speak, but also being myself an indigenous woman, I know how to understand the needs and the complexities of living on a local community, for example. So I'm able to navigate these two different paths, which perhaps they do not overlap because there are two different paradigms in this equation, but I think having spaces of neutral dialogue is very important. So to keep open the eyes to other sources of knowledge, to other knowledge systems, and also to other views of nature.
Yeah, and for me, after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, a number of scientists and organizations came into our region, and they took half of the billion-dollar settlement and put it into science that shows that oil and water don't mix. And I felt like that science should be put to work. It shouldn't be gathering dust on shelves, that science should work for the people. And so we decided at the Native Conservancy that we would become citizen scientists. We would figure out how to get out on the water, like Yolanda was saying. We just had to take it upon ourselves to learn the lingo and figure out how to do it. And we recently won a Pew Charitable Trust grant and a Paul Allen grant, carrying out the science as citizen scientists. And I really think that this type of work is going to make more sense for our communities, and teaching our people how to be better stewards and guardians of the land.
Wonderful, thank you. And the other question was, what policy recommendations would you have for state and local governments on how to include tribal and First Nation communities into adaptation and mitigation planning?
I think this question goes more for Dune, because here in Mexico, we do not talk about tribes. We do name ourselves as indigenous communities. So Dune, please.
Yeah, I had to learn how to push the envelope, whether it was legally, media, direct action, or through legislation. And I felt like, our work is really about protecting our sovereignty and our subsistence and our spirituality and furthering our self-determination. And as Yolanda had said earlier in her presentation, this really is about a fight for the rights of nature. And being a lifelong commercial fisherman, if you protect the wild salmon habitat, the salmon will always find a way to come home because it's a renewable economy. And as long as you protect the habitat, they'll have a home. Where with mariculture, we're creating habitat. It's a regenerative economy. So both of them, if you just are good stewards and good guardians of your land and the ocean, then this resource will grow and it'll continue to feed your people. And another thing that Yolanda said that I thought was wonderful is that historically we've always only taken what we needed. And so, I feel like, some of the things that we have to do is educate local, state, and federal governments that, we want to co-manage our lands. We want to take care of them. We want, science projects that matter. We want to be a part of things that are actually making a difference and don't take, 1,000 years to figure out how to do the job that you could do in about 10 years. And so I feel like, we have to, as a community, We have to go out onto the land and into the ocean. And our last full-blooded Eyak, Marie, before she passed, she said to us, you're going to start remembering things out in the wild that you never knew. And I never understood what she said until we rafted the Copper River 70 different times. And the Copper River is one of the fastest, largest moving bodies of water on planet Earth. And we did it 70 times, but every time I got out there, I started remembering things I didn't know. And so you start applying that knowledge and that understanding to your respective regions. You're going to know how to save it before government does.
Thank you. And then we've got a question for Yolanda. You talked about using and constructing wetlands. Can you expand on the importance of these systems in managing water?
Yes, sure, but I'm not a wetland expert, but I can say, for example, here in Yucatan, in the last few years, we lost due to different natural hazards, different natural events like hurricanes, and we lost more than 80% of the wetland covering all the Yucatan Peninsula. And those were very good in protecting us against very strong, I'm not going to say long, but yeah, strong climatic conditions. And because of that, I think they are very important, not only in protecting the coast, but also for example, Yucatan is one of the main places for migratory birds. So our biodiversity is well maintained. So there are different aspects that wetlands can provide to the people and also to nature.
Wonderful. And we've getting a few comments saying that this is one of the best presentations they've ever seen. So I can just echo the sentiments. There's another question that says, what would you wish for non-Indigenous folks working for Indigenous communities? Like me, I'm a wetland biologist working for a tribe in Washington, would know or do to support the communities they work for?
Do you want to answer, Dune?
Sure. I think the key, and I've worked with many NGOs, I've worked with numerous attorneys, a lot of people who come and visit. We probably have 400 visitors a year. We have 2 eco lodges where we host people and hold retreats and healing gatherings. And what we tell everyone is that this is about sharing knowledge and respect and honoring Indigenous knowledge, because, we have survived for thousands of years, and we know how to manage and be stewards and be guardians of our homelands. And, like when the Exxon spill happened, I kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for somebody to come and save us. I saw a lot of movies. Somebody always comes in and saves us. Well, no one came. The president never showed up. The Alaska delegation never rose up. No one took care of us. We had to organize. We had to figure out how we were going to work together. And so I sat down with 37 different people, and I said, okay, how this is going to happen is we have to leave our egos and our dysfunction and our baggage outside of the door, and we have to figure out how to come together and direct our energy, that time, money, and love. And 2/3 of the people got up and left the room. And then when there was 13 left, I said, okay, here's how it's going to work. The veto power does not leave the front line. Here's the top 10 issues that we're working on. And if you agree with it, great. If you don't, great. But we're the ones who have to live here. You're going to go back to your homes wherever you live. But this is where we've lived for 3,500 years, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And so you have to respect and honor the people who live here and our way of life. And so now that things are changing in the world, we're going to have to figure out how to grow things from the land and the sea. We're going to have to figure out how to preserve and restore and protect habitats that have been destroyed. Like just for a salmon habitat alone, To give you an idea, if you just develop 10% of wild salmon habitat, those salmon could disappear for 100 years. But you restore that spawning habitat, those salmon will be back in 3 to 5 years. So it really comes down to common sense and courage and strength and numbers and showing up and just representing and saying this is the way it's going to be and this is the way it has to be if we're going to survive as a human race, let alone save the ocean that we depend on.
Wonderful. We've got another question that is, how can we bring a spiritual feeling into restoration, science, and practice?
Yolanda?
Yeah, well, this is a personal response. I think the spiritual aspect should be always present because we tend to see nature as something that we can explode, we can treat in a bad manner. But no, if we keep this spiritual aspect of nature, then we will be able to treat her better, I guess. So we really need to reconnect this broken relationship we have at this moment with nature. So to make sure to respect her and to bring this spiritual and cultural aspect of nature into our daily lives. I guess.
Yeah. And for me, when you go out in those wild places and you start getting these messages, what happens is we have to be humble and we have to, ask that us humans today are used as conduits to, have the voices of our ancestors be heard. And so, like a lot of times I don't have the answers, but when I go out for my long walks and I go out onto the Delta or out into the Sound, and I'm able to spend that time with Mother Earth, I get the answers. And where like in the old days, uh, you know, the indigenous peoples, at least in our region and different places, would go to mountaintops and they would have these, 3-4 day ceremonies. Well, we have the luxury of of spiritual fiber optics, where if we send out, a message to 20 lawyers and say, this is the issue, this is what's going on, and I need to know what to do by morning. And then all of a sudden, all these emails come back and you have all these answers. And it happens through networks. It happens through timing. It happens through seeking out the best advice and the best minds. And I've been fortunate to build brain trusts around all of my nonprofits and bring in people, experts that, really can answer some of these questions. And then I go back to the land and I say, is this it? Is this what we're going to do? Because this is the best we got. And what each of us need to know is we are the best we got. And so this is it. I'm in. Are you?
I'm in with you. We've got about time for one more question, and this is for Yolanda, but I think you could both speak to it. The question is, could you please share some thoughts about the special roles that Maya women and other Indigenous Native women in general play in water governance? So for Dune, it would be your community as well, but go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the role of Maya women is crucial, of course, not only in the ancient Maya population, but also at present, since they are responsible for managing household duties and also taking care of the health of the family as well. And there is one aspect that I would like to emphasize, that interestingly, the role of women in Maya water ceremonies is minimum. And I don't know why, because I have been able to attend some of those ceremonies, and I was not allowed to even approach to the ceremonial center. So I think the role of woman is more into taking care of the family, growing the food, using the water to clean, etc. But the ceremonial and spiritual aspect, to pray for the gods, was mainly related to men.
Yeah. And, for me, my mother, Rosie, would always tell her 7 little Indians, there's nothing stronger in this world than your belief in yourself and your dreams. And she would always also say that women, the mamas of the earth, are the ones who bring life into the planet. The men in their egos will always go to war and fight and destroy things and develop everything. And so I was brought up by my grandmother and my mama, and they taught us, the ways that we needed to act and the way that we needed to be in the world. And they taught us about the seasons of animals, the seasons of berries, the seasons of salmon. And what I found in this mariculture space, in this regenerative economy, which is one of 1,000 blue-green economies that need to be created and implemented and funded if we're serious about saving the ocean, let alone the water and indigenous and non-native people around the world, is that the women are leading this effort and they're leading the way. And Evelyn Booth here, she's one of those strong, powerful Native women that's making a difference in the world. I went to this village of cake, and and I was excited to bring mariculture and talk about it. And I was talking about, building 20-acre farms, and that we are the biggest permitter in the state. And that this is the size of farm you want, and this is, where you want to build it. And 3 Native women showed up and they said, okay, we want a 60-acre farm. And, and they just laid it out. And so if the Native women lead, everyone else will follow. Because if this mariculture industry can work for Indigenous peoples, it can work for anybody around the planet. And so I'm just excited to be here with you all, and thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. We're just about at the hour, so I wanted to take the last minute for you and Yolanda, if there's anything else that you'd like to share with us before we close today.
Well, for me is, and this is related to one of the questions that is on the chat, that how climate change is affecting our thinking. And from my perspective, I often see that we think that we humans, we are here since the day we were born, and that's not true. Indigenous peoples, we have been here for thousands of years, and we have been experiencing not only climate changes, but different changes in our daily lives. And I think our thinking has not changed, has only evolved according to the circumstances. Our knowledge remains, but our understanding and our relation with the world is different. But I think we maintain our traditions, our roots, and our appreciation and value to nature.
Yeah, and the last statement I'd like to make is that, growing up, I took a lot of things for granted on the land and in the ocean, in our fishery. I always thought it would be this way, and I'd be able to, transfer my permits and boats and nets to my daughter and to, the youth, and that we would just live on. But when the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened, it took something that catastrophic to wake me up. And so for the last 35 years, I've represented, I've shown up, I've been here. I do the work. But now with the current political situation, financial, earth, changing times, climate change, ocean acidification, ocean warming, ocean rise, this is our call to action. This is our time right now to wake up and listen and at the same time start to be heard, and start representing, and it takes courage, but you take that first step, and then you're going to find yourself running. I found myself running for 35 years. I didn't once slow down, because I felt like every day that I showed up and I pushed the envelope, then we had a chance to save what's left. And there's a lot of restoration that has to happen. There's a lot of political changes that have to happen. We need to look at things differently, and together we can do that. So again, I'm thrilled that you invited me.
Well, thank you again. And thank you to all our guests. We've got great appreciation in the chat for you all. So I think that we'll end it there. Thank you all again. Thank you to Sarah, and thank you to our wonderful presenters.